Hey, everybody, an apology a day. It makes the cobwebs go away. We have somebody apologizing to me today, and I am delighted to say no matter what time of day it is, you can always make amends. Be good people and take responsibility for who you are and what you see.
Yeah, good old-fashioned apology.
Good old-fashioned
apology. Never hurt anyone.
It goes a long way.
There's a whole long list. If anyone listening wants to, other media out there would like to apologize to Anne, we're
right.
open.
We're open. You know what? We'll give you a full-on interview. Yeah. Everybody stay tuned for Michael Musto.
Enjoy.
We're better together with Anne and Heather.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Better Together with Anne and Heather. We are so delighted today because an old friend, a new friend to be, but more than anything, a gossip columnist, greedy for the dirt and everything else. I have been both in his columns and read his columns and delight in his stories of and tales of celebrity in New York and all of the things that are.
Do you delight in them?
I do. Well, now I can because I'm on the other side of it.
All right. Today our guest is Michael Musto. Michael is a journalist with a long career in reporting on entertainment, nightlife, and celebrities. He's contributed to too many news outlets and television shows to name. You may know Michael best as the columnist for The Village Voice. In his 26 plus years at The Village Voice, he wrote more than 1,300 columns spanning the highs and lows of pop culture. His column, La Dolce Musto, covered gossip, nightlife, reviews, interviews, and political observations. Michael is also an author. His works include Downtown, Manhattan on the Rocks, as well as a compilation of selected columns published as La Dolce Musto, writing by the world's most outrageous columnists, and a subsequent collection, Fork on the Left, Knife in the Back. He continues to write about pop culture and socio-political issues. And Michael, we welcome you into the Better Together tribe, where our goal is, at the end of the show, to have a little bit more insight into how we can live with more kindness, understanding, and inject more good old-fashioned fucking fun into our lives.
Amen.
Welcome to the show.
That's great. I'm the perfect guest because I was such a shit. You know, but I'm big enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I'm proud of myself for going there because not everyone is.
You know what, Michael? I mean, I just have to say, for those who are listening who may not know a little bit of this history, Michael has been writing about me my whole life. Wrote a lot and was very close in delivering the information of the Ann and Ellen story, I would say 20 years ago, and subsequently has written me a letter. Really claiming responsibility for what I believe in your journalism was perhaps an unfair, not fully articulated vision or story about me. Is that a correct way to say that,
yeah,
Michael?
Well, there's a phenomenon in the media of which I am part, where you kind of raise somebody up, and then when you're tired of them, you kind of knock them down again. I'm not apologizing for everything I wrote about everyone, because I wrote some very harsh things that I'll stand by, and I'm furious at a lot of closet cases and homophobes and all kinds of hateful people, and I'm still full of rage, and I think that's healthy for a journalist. But in this case, I was criticizing you for some of the things I already had praised you for. And 3 years ago, 2018, I wrote something for Out.com where I just put it all out there. I didn't even know, Anne, if you would see the letter. I hoped you would. But then I even thought, well, what's she going to think of this letter? Who knows? That's why I didn't send it to you directly. And it kind of opened up a new conversation. And a lot of people said, well, congrats, Michael, for apologizing, and good for Anne. And then some haters kind of come in too, because that's inevitable online. But I've learned, like Joe Biden does, to kind of drown out the hate. And I'm glad I wrote this.
Anne never reads anything on herself, really, but I brought your letter to her attention, and you were really moved by it.
Yes. I mean, I say, Michael, I don't even read any of my reviews. Well, I was called the white trash Gwyneth Paltrow when I moved to Los Angeles. Maybe you coined that phrase. I don't know. But not knowing whether that was a compliment or not, I figured I'd take a 50-50 shot and not ask any further questions. And I think that kind of led my life in terms of understanding right then, like half the people are going to like me. If half the people do, that's a 50-50 shot is okay with me. And rather than diving into all of the specificities of what people were saying about me, it was really too I mean, in all honesty, it was too much. It was easier for me not to absorb all of the press that was being written or around Ellen and me. It was almost impossible to believe what an impact it had. And of course, I was very young in Hollywood at the time and didn't understand the impact of what it would be to be the first straight actress falling in love with a gay woman and saying and coming out about it. And so a lot of nasty things were said, as I heard, but I want to tell you, and I think this is important for our audience, we don't always know when we are doing the right thing, where, if it will get to, like Michael said, if it will get to me. There's an apology. I would love for you to read the letter because it's a beautiful letter. Yeah, I mean, but when Heather came to me, I have to say, I think I wanted an apology from someone, anyone, at all, to acknowledge that perhaps maybe the perspective that was painted on me wasn't necessarily the full picture. So I want you to know how much it did move me, and the importance of it and the impact that I want the readers to understand, that when we do something that's nicer, kinder, in the right vein for others, it's going to get to them some way. So I'm thrilled to be able to tell you 3 years later, your letter moved me. You are the first person and only person who did that, as far as I know. And I want to bring you into the fold of my arms to say, you are a very unique man to have done that.
Oh, thanks. Well, I know it was overwhelming to be in the position you were in, because not only is the media eating you alive and writing about every move you make, celebrating, but also criticizing, but everyone at their water cooler is doing the same thing in the entire world. And I think we're seeing now with this Britney Spears documentary, a lot of the media coming forward and saying, we were too harsh. Why were we attacking this girl? She was just a girl who was thrust into celebrity.
And if you look back at Anne's story, it's interesting. She never changed her narrative. She always said the same thing. She always said, I fell in love with a woman. And it's only now that we as a society are catching up and are able to find the language and the understanding. You know, back then it was either you were gay or you were straight, and there was nothing in between. And you were always saying the message that everybody's saying now. And I think it's interesting, and it probably feels good to you now that people are finally catching up to what you were saying 20 some years ago.
And I have to admit, yes. I was what you would call biphobic, because starting in college, guys would tell me, oh, I'm bi. And it turned out they weren't. They were just closet gay. You know, so in my mind, it was like, oh, if somebody said they're bi, they might be lying. And it made me too biphobic. And now I realize there is a sexuality spectrum, and everyone deserves the right to the dignity of their sexuality, whatever it may be. Do you want to hear the letter?
I think that would be a good time to read the letter.
Fantastic. Please.
Dear Anne Heche, I have some 20-year or so stuff to work out with you. You famously had a relationship with Ellen DeGeneres starting in 1997, back when that kind of thing was rare and extra exciting. And when you two were canoodling and carrying on, I was instrumental in putting out the information on that in the press. I worked in cahoots with Page Six to break information I'd gotten about your relationship and how it was playing out. My reportage on your joint whereabouts was priceless. You gals were fun and brave at a time when few people were out in the Hollywood landscape. And I loved being part of the Ellen and Anne juggernaut that helped to change the world with its gleeful openness. You didn't seem mad at me for beating your drum. In fact, when I later wrote a favorable paper magazine cover story on you, you called to thank me, and you even put Ellen on the phone to say a few words. I was verklempt. But after your 2000 breakup with Ellen, all the strides you had made in the press seemed to go backwards, and we all turned on you. You entered a crisis phase, and we were behaving erratically. And you were behaving erratically, ringing a stranger's bell and saying weird things on drugs, for one thing. And we dutifully made fun of your downfall, which was awful, even if Ellen herself had chimed in with some negative things to say about you in retrospect. You, and of course those you may have been harassing, deserved more compassion at this point, especially in light of the advances you and Ellen had made for the community and how celebrated you had been as a new member of our club. What's more, post Ellen, you ended up with a man, as you had done before Ellen, and I joined the brigade that lip-smackingly called you a phony. After all, you had come out as a lesbian. How could you then find refuge back in boring heterosexuality? We felt duped, as if you had scammed us, then went right back to the peen, turning your back on us for life. Dumb. I was dumb, and I, like everyone else, was forgetting that you were bi. You were not a closet lesbian who had finally come out and then gone back in. As you yourself had stated, all of your relationships before Ellen had been with men. So no one should have ruled out the fact that you could return to that sphere after you and Ellen were history. When you fell in love with Ellen, you acknowledged that this was something you had simply fallen for a person, regardless of their gender, and the pairing made sense for that moment. It was kismet, and it simply had happened. So, when the relationship imploded, it was perfectly natural for you to then fall in love with someone else of either gender, you know, with someone human. When you went back to dating men, we should have accepted it as a natural extension of bisexuality rather than pile on you for abandoning us as if you had somehow used the LGBT community to advance yourself. Something it wasn't easy to do back when the industry didn't exactly favor out LGBTs. Strangely, the same people who claimed you were using gays to get ahead were the first to trumpet the opportunities you had lost for coming out with that relationship. Since all of that, awareness of bisexuality has grown a lot, and people better understand how it can lead to all sorts of couplings, which are not necessarily lies or betrayals. I am so sorry I came down on you for falling for another man. And that relationship didn't last, but you followed that with yet another male. And I'm still proud of you for the advances in celebrity visibility and appreciation that your relationship with Ellen helped to encourage. I'm going to add grovelingly yours, Michael Musto.
Michael, this is the crowd clapping. Yeah. That means so much to me. How does it feel to read it to me?
Felt like I was in third grade show and tell, reading a story I wrote about my dog. But it was great. It's liberating and it's cathartic. It feels good. I'm a sucker for an apology. No matter what people have said or done to me, if they apologize and they're sincere about it, I am putty in their hands. So that's why I know the power of apology. And Sandra Bernhard is someone else who I had written. I celebrated Sandra, and then I kind of didn't like something she said, and I turned on her in a way. And when I saw her a few years ago, I went up to her and apologized. And that was, again, healing. And she tweeted something about the power of forgiveness.
The power of forgiveness on Better Together. We're going to have that as one of our mantras and practices. And I also want to say that it is never too late. I think sometimes we get into an understanding with ourselves. We've done something and then we bury it and we cover it, or we're kind of ashamed of it, but we don't really know, and we skirt around and we run around in circles around ourselves. But what you did, Michael, was say, you know what? I don't care how many years later this is. I'm going to say it right now. And that power is equal to all that. What you did is the magic. And I want to encourage us all to remember that we can always take responsibility. Whatever moment we're in, we can take responsibility right now.
It's like people, we're going to die. You know what I'm saying? We are all going to die. So why don't and this past year of lockdown has given me a lot of time for reflection and wanting to make amends with people and wanting to resolve things and tie up loose ends. Mm-hmm. If we die, we can't do that anymore. So do it now.
That's right.
Well, on Better Together, we are all about the importance of forgiveness. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to find out a little bit about what it was that drew you to being a gossip columnist.
Oh, let's get behind the doors with Michael Musto.
And we're back. I'd actually like to read a quote from you. And I'm not sure if it's from one of your books. You'll have to tell me. This is a quote. I'll always be grateful to gossip for helping me through a deeply lonely childhood and adolescence in the bottom part of Brooklyn. The only Italian American only child in history, I didn't even have imaginary friends, but sitting on the front stoop, I'd come alive as I'd blab with the next door neighbors about all the other neighbors and their various marital and sartorial triumphs and faux pas. Bingo, I'd found my calling. And I think that's so fascinating to
the birth of a gossip columnist.
Right?
Yes.
People might not, and there is truth. There is community in storytelling. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about that.
It's so true. I was such a shy child. I couldn't even speak in school. I was too afraid to even raise my hand. But somehow on the stoop with my parents and the neighbors, we could kind of make fun of the hairdo of the lady across the street. And it was harmless. And it was a bonding experience. It was a way to take me outside of myself. And I also learned to show my appreciation because I love celebrities and entertainers. And so I elevate them. And if you sort of knock someone down, it's good to kind of cheer on their next chapter because everybody in showbiz rises like a phoenix again. Don't they? Am I wrong?
Well, we're hoping.
Yes.
Hoping for one more
Michael, a few times.
And no, Anne, you're doing fantastically. And I always was attracted to sort of center stage, but sabotaged things so that I wasn't in center stage. I was on the sidelines, overhearing and observing. I'm much more comfortable as an observer than a celebrity. You get some celebrity as a writer because you're writing about celebrities. You get some fallout. But you're never going to be as famous as the star. And that's where I feel comfortable. That's why I liked working for an alternative weekly, The Village Voice, which is coming back, by the way, and I'm in the first new issue. Yeah, this month.
Is it? Wow.
It's coming back as a quarterly and a website, and I'll be working for them again. So it's like I can't get the Village Voice out of my hair, which is great. It's always been my home base.
Well, the timing is probably great for that, hoping that we come alive again and be able to report on all of that. I loved a story. There was a story that I read about you on going to see The Sound of Music with your aunt and the feeling you had when you were comped in the theater when you got in for free was something that you wanted to experience again. Can you tell us that story? Because I think it's funny. It amused me.
Yes.
My family was very religious. My aunt was Sister Rosaria. Just a beautiful person. She wasn't like those mean, angry nuns that I was afraid of as a kid. She was very supportive. She never judged me. She never questioned me being gay or anything. And she would bring me to movies. She brought me, of course, to The Sound of Music. That's a nun movie. And I loved it. It had, puppets and Nazis. It has everything.
Yeah, puppets and Nazis.
But you got puppets.
And the Swiss Alps. From the second that Julie Andrews is spinning around in the Alps singing the title song, my head was spinning. But the best moment was on the way in. Yes. The box office lady says to me and my aunt the nun, "Oh no, you don't pay. We don't charge a nun for The Sound of Music."
Wow.
We were swept in.
That is fantastic.
I was in heaven because this addicted me to the comp lifestyle. I was on guest list ever since.
Yeah.
I think I love that story so much. Well, and you also have said you are an incredibly socially awkward person who insists on going to parties every night.
There's an element of self-punishment, let's face it. Just like I self-sabotage, I also self-flagellate. So my biggest nightmare is being in a room full of people. So what do I do every night? I go to a room full of people.
That's called facing your fears. We appreciate that on this show. I would love to know, Michael, if there is, the one that you wanted to meet, the one that you were writing about, and then found yourself standing in front of it talking to. Is there one that makes you go?
Well, you made his top 10 list.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
with a bullet. My number one celebrity of all time is Diana Ross. And there I was in the 80s on the Intrepid, which is a big docked military boat where there was a gigantic party for Diana Ross. And I'm like, oh my God, she's right there. She's like 3 feet away. What do I do? How do I introduce myself? At this point, I had a band where I sang cover versions of Supreme songs. I didn't tell her that.
Oh my!
What?
Oh my God!
How did I miss that in the bio?
Well, I try to keep that quiet, but I was sort of a gay male version of Diana Ross.
It's out
sort
now.
of like Michael Jackson. Too soon? Get this. Diana Ross came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Diana Ross." And I was like, I know.
Oh. Was that during the time? Is that when The Wiz came out? I mean, that was one of my favorite movies, and nobody has ever watched it. Wasn't that around the time of Michael Jackson? She did that.
I'm not a big Wiz person because the casting was bizarre. I mean, Diana was like in her 30s playing Dorothy. It was very bizarre, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing was bizarre, certainly, but when she sings "Home." I mean, even if you fast forward to that, I swear, if you are as big a fan of hers as you just explained, you'll just melt into tears when she sings "When I Think of Home." It's just an absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's just if you can sing it well, that's the song to do. I won't sing it for you.
Okay. All right.
There's a new movie about Billie Holiday, The United States versus Billie Holiday, with Andra Day, who's really good. She's up for the Oscar.
Yes.
But to me, I'm Team Diana Ross, and Lady Sings the Blues. Diana Ross is extraordinary in that movie as Billie Holiday.
Well, and as somebody who appreciates celebrity, like you can't, she really embraced that role, like just kind of like, I am woman, see me roar. Like just, I can think of her, Cher, my Dolly Parton, that really embrace that sort of over the top celebrity.
Diana just ripped off the secret.
Okay, but now I have to ask because is there one, if Diana is of the years gone by, is there one in your future that you would like to interview or give a big hug to?
Well, the weird
that you
thing
haven't yet.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I've written more about Madonna than anybody in history. And we actually, when I had my band, we shared a bill at a nightclub when she was up and coming and I was going nowhere. So that was interesting, but we never actually had a conversation. And when she was huge and was having her sex book party, remember her sex book?
Oh, yeah.
I was right next to her. And again, here was my chance and I was too nervous. But Liz Rosenberg, Madonna's publicist, said, "Oh, look, Madonna, Michael Musto's dressed like the Pope," because I was. And that was it for Madonna. So I'd actually like to sit down with Madonna. I've also been to many events where I've been close to Meryl Streep and again, never had the nerve because I think she's so incredible and so witty. And what are you going to say? "Hi, I like your work." You think she's never heard that before? You know what I mean? But I would like to have a serious sit down with Meryl Streep.
Do you get worried when you meet celebrities in person that they're going to be mad at you for something you've said? And are they? Have you ever had like an encounter where somebody has gotten angry with you?
Oh my God, yes. When I walk into a room, half of the room runs away, which is that's a good ratio. It means I'm doing my job. But yeah, many times they'll remember something I don't even remember. And I'm like, "Oh, which horrible thing did I write about you?"
Have you ever had anybody write you back a letter?
Oh yeah, I've gotten every kind of retribution in the world. You name it. But occasionally, like Jason Bateman said, "I like what you wrote, criticizing my acceptance speech," and he goes, "You were right." And I'm like, you don't have to be that
I think
nice.
he's so funny.
Wait, Jason, you don't have to be that nice.
I really liked your criticism. You wrote it well.
It's like, yeah, I really did suck.
That takes a lot to man up, though.
All right, let's take another quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to get back to Anne and Ellen, because I think there's some unanswered questions there that I think that would be interesting for us to dive into a little.
Oh, rapid fire with Michael Musto when we come back. Welcome back, everybody.
So I just thought we would go back and talk a little bit about, you and Ellen. And I think that you said one of the things is that Michael is the only one who has kind of come forth to apologize for the way he looked at things or covered things back in the day. But I also don't think that anybody has really ever asked you the question, why? Why, Ellen? Why did you take her to that movie premiere after knowing her for 4 days? What was it that made you make that choice?
I do want to answer that question. Michael, did that question cross cross your
I
mind?
just figured you were mutually infatuated and having a great time together.
And I think there were a lot of, everybody made their own assumption. When I look back at my life in that time and the fork that was in the road, I could either chase down trying to defend myself. There were so many different misinterpretations or goings on, which again, I didn't read about because at that time there were more than 50% unfavorable, to be certain. And what I found in my work in the last 20 years, really looking back at that time, was what I always wanted was for somebody to be interested in why a person who was being called the it girl at the time, which I was. Ellen had to tell me that, by the way. Why I would put myself on the line like that when it was kind of absorbed or seen as somewhat either frivolous, or that I was trying to piggyback on the ride that Ellen was taking. Two equally as confusing reasons to make a choice to stand up for the world and say that you can love who you want to love. And I'm curious if you knew that I only met Ellen 4 days before I took her to the premiere.
I didn't know it was that whirlwind. I love that. I think that's exciting. What I was amazed is you're showing up at the premiere holding hands and you're spoon feeding the media. Hey, folks, we're an item. And the media is terrified to go there. And they all reported Ellen and her friend Anne Heche came together. When I broke the story is I got a call from a lesbian bar saying Anne and Ellen were making out all over the bar in New York.
That never would have been true because Ellen did not show signs in public. And I don't know if there are so many different things that happened around my understanding and interpretation of what was going on. But first and foremost, I think it's important for people to know this story. Whether or not people asked me why I did it or not, I think it's important to share with you. My father was one of the first men to die of AIDS in 1983. And his double life, in fact, the New York Times called it the gay disease the day after my father died. And from that moment on, every member of my family was told, and without even knowing about the sexual abuse that ran rampant in my family, we were told that we had 9 years until we were cleared of the disease. So we became walking lepers, basically. And my looking back at that was, we were homeless. My siblings were dead, all but one. And two at that time. And I knew that I had to make a different choice in my life because what I had determined for me was that I ended up in a dump and by a dumpster with a lot of people dead around me because a man couldn't tell the truth about his sexuality. That's what I pinned it on. And of course I was a 13-year-old girl trying to figure out, and that really started the course of my life. So what I don't think people have understood, if you knew me, it wasn't shocking at all that I would stand up for Ellen or stand by her side. It was more the love of the truth that was coming out that I thought could change the course of people's lives. And the beacon that she was and the light that she was shining to me was what love was. There was nothing else that could have been defined for me that love meant at that time more than a person standing up, telling the truth, and coming out about their sexuality. And I think that's an important piece of the puzzle that I don't think people often get to process. Does that help ground? Does that answer any questions?
Oh, absolutely. Context is everything. And so many people weren't even around in the 80s. So we're here to tell them AIDS was a horrifying death. It was 100% death sentence. Right. And it was a grisly, grisly death. And not only did you die this horrible death, but you were called a bad person by people thumping their Bibles, that you deserved it.
That's
so you
right.
were doubly oppressed. And nurses were terrified to even give you your food. They didn't want to go near you. It was a horrifying time. And that's why it became more and more where people in Hollywood were hiding and saying, I'm not LGBT. And more the activist movement arose to say, come out, people are dying. You have to send a message to the young gays in the heartland that it's not a disease to be gay. And so these two conflicting phenomena were happening at the same time. In 1987, I joined ACT UP, which was Larry Kramer's activist group to bring attention to AIDS. President Reagan wouldn't even mention it. And we were screaming in the street to pay attention, government, pay attention, media. By the 90s, it was more manageable, thankfully. AIDS became more of a way to live than a way to die. But there were still all these issues like the one you brought to the fore, that it's important to say it's okay to have a relationship with someone of the same gender.
And I think that because, you know, when you look back on it and know Anne's story, when she sees Ellen, this is a woman who is being completely open with her sexuality. It's no surprise that that becomes
taking the risk.
Incredibly appealing to you and something that you are drawn to. Yeah. And so then when your agents and managers tell you cannot bring her to the movie premiere because, you know, you can't let people think that, you know, you're a part of this, again, knowing you and knowing your story, there is no other alternative for you but to bring her, because you have come out of a family that all they did was lie about their sexuality. So putting that...
It literally was a death sentence to me if I didn't put it first in my life. Right. In my opinion, that lie meant my death. And the only way I was going to be a survivor of my life was to live in the truth. What that did was challenge my commitment to it in a bigger way than I had ever imagined I would be challenged. To go, oh, how about this? You've got the carrot in front of you to become the movie star, the girl, what everybody was saying. Here's a Harrison Ford movie. And at the same time said to me, but if you take her, that carrot's going away, honey. Your $10 million picture deal, gone. Bye. And by the way, the executive at Fox at that time was a gay woman who I didn't sleep with. And she's the one who told me before I got onto the red carpet that I would be fired. So... it's nice for me in this moment and such a big part of what Heather and I are doing in terms of placing the story in history so that we're able to talk about what I'm doing in terms of a conscious, loving thought. When I came out, it was all emotion. I was just, wow, I was led by my emotions. I was activated by the truth. I was blown away by my opportunity to stand up for the very thing that I thought was going to save the lives of everybody, which is tell the truth. And funnily enough, I still believe that. Now I've cultivated a practice of it. I've written my second book, and I'm ready to be. And it's easier for me to talk about the intelligence of what was not there when emotionally I felt like I had been set. There was one road and it was being set free with the truth, and I was able to stand by it, and it was a miracle of my life. I wear it as my most proudest badge of honor.
And I think the other thing that's important too is that when you live the life that you lived, coming from a religious cult, coming from sexual abuse, coming from a family, where your father died of AIDS and was living a double life, you put all of that, being homeless, you put all of that together, and you are going to see the world differently. And what people did with you is they called you crazy. And you weren't, and you aren't.
No.
I know that. You can't help but see the world differently and react to things differently if that has been your background. And I think that we also look at mental health differently now than we did back then, and have more understanding of people who have gone through. Certainly, one of the things you went through would have altered, your perception of life, and you had about 5 or 6 on that pile. So anyways, I wanted to say that too, because I know that that's been something that's been reported as well. And it's just, it's false, and it needs to be put in perspective.
We have come so far. When I grew up, there was not even Oprah. There was no one to bring issues to the public to say it's okay to talk about sexual abuse or sexuality or any number of topics. I think some of the best decisions ever made are things made when you ignore what your manager and agent says. What you did was heroic and triumphant. Who cares about an agent? There's always going to be another job. I grew up in a world of secrets. My parents loved me, but it was all, don't tell Michael this, don't tell him that. And Angie has got lung cancer. Don't tell Michael. And I had to figure everything out. It's one of the things that propelled me to be a reporter and want to tell the truth. Tell the truth. The truth can't harm anybody. The truth can only set people free. And in the business, I think in showbiz, there are so many lies because so much of it is based on artifice and image, and you're playing parts that are not really you. And it's all about how they shape you and how they mold you. But Anne, you paved the way for so much. Every other actress now is saying they'll sleep with both genders, or there's more than 2 genders.
Right now, it's actually popular to be. It's like
now the teenagers are really getting on side with this bisexual thing. Also, just to note, I do not label myself a bisexual. That is something that came out of, I think, a need to fill a gap, which I think we do when we don't understand people. There's a gap there, so we want to fill it in with, oh, you know what, she's bi. And the fact is, I've only been with one woman. I have not. I haven't been in a relationship since Ellen with a woman. But that doesn't mean I rule it out. But I don't identify. I don't identify with bisexuality. What I identify with, and I always have identified with, is love. And love has no gender. I also believe that we are in a world where our components, our physical components that we're learning more and more about with science and everything else, we are all things. And that is more meaningful to me than calling somebody by a label that says, I'm going to stamp you as being okay with both things, rather than I'm going to engage with you because with the whole of you, however you express that. Sometimes I want to wear a suit. Sometimes I want to wear a dress. The spectrum is a full spectrum of what opportunities we have in this life. And that's really what I want to, when we talk about on Better Together, but what I want to represent in the world, rather than myself as a label, myself as a beacon for somebody who says, I can wash away these labels. And I think the labels have kind of gotten in the way of us being able to embrace, and they've become a tool of separation.
I don't know. I have to. I mean, I know I'm here to apologize for an old letter, so I don't want to start a new thing. But I have to disagree. I have to disagree with you, and I'll come on in 3 years and apologize for this. But bisexuality is just someone who's attracted to more than one gender. You definitely qualify. I think you're sort of insulting bisexuals by trying to distance yourself and saying you resent the label. I had that my whole life where people, don't call me gay, don't call me gay, but you are. You know?
Yes, I absolutely. Please don't get me wrong. I'm now that would be really funny if now I'm insulting bisexuals. We've got to have a little bit of a lightened sense of humor around me talking about labels. I don't like them. They're not me. I'm not insulting anybody by saying so. I'm engaging with the concept and opportunity. By the way, I was 20 years ahead of my time. Last time I spoke about love in such a public way, and I feel the same way now. Love is not, and nor does it deserve to be put in any kind of container. And that's all that I mean to say, if that's clarification. And for any of those bisexuals who are listening,
one thing I've learned is to let people identify themselves however they want. So I'm just going to drop it.
That's a beautiful thing. I think that is a beautiful thing. I identify myself as a he, she, which is also my last name. So you can take that to the bank. See, there's something more on top of bisexual, isn't there?
No, I do think, and it's something that you've always said, and that love is love, and you follow your heart, and I think that everybody's journey and experience and identification with sexuality is different. Some are more complicated than others, and they're all respected and accepted. And I think that's where we've come to, and it's taken us a long time to get here, and there's still more work to be done. But I think that when we can get to a place that Anne can say how she feels, like I am, that you used to say that you would get it wrong and say you were sexually liquid. I'm like, no,
she's like, it's not liquid.
It's not
I was
liquid.
like explaining to my 12-year-old who was then 10 at the time, Michael, you'll appreciate this story. Heather and I were starting our business partnership. Really, it was a few years ago, and we were really talking about sculpting what our voice is as a team, and what I was going to do in writing my second book called, that starts with the heart, but it's called Call Me Anne. And I was living in this old beautiful building, you might know it, the El Royale in Hollywood, and my son, Heather and I were, I don't know, we're outlining something that we wanted to do, or stand up, a comedy show. And my son, Atlas, comes in and says, Mom, I just, you know what? I know you're doing stand up and you got to listen to this woman. I just saw a commercial of hers and I think you'll think she's funny. And I said, who is it? Do you remember the name? He said, yeah, Ellen somebody. And I look at Heather and I go, okay, I guess now's the time. So I was saying, Atlas, you're 10. It's
you're
time.
7 or whatever.
No, he was 10.
Okay.
Yeah, it was only a couple of years ago.
Okay.
it's time for you to know that's mom's ex-girlfriend. And he goes, oh, you're gay? And I said, no, I wouldn't call myself gay. He goes, well, mom, a woman who loves a woman, it's called a lesbian. And I go, okay, well, thanks. Thanks for the title, but I think they're calling me now sexually liquid. And Heather nearly spits out her iced tea. She's like, it's not sexually liquid, you dumb ass. It's sexually fluid.
So she
my
does.
God. I've been saying I'm sexually fluid ever since.
See, she does have a problem with labels. That's why we don't give her any. She can't.
I liquefy them into mercury.
Yeah.
I want to just for a minute put a moment to what it is that we've talked about with Michael in terms of talking about labeling, in terms of talking about taking responsibility for things that we see in people, and then we can change our minds. We can take responsibility. We can ask for forgiveness. We can live in the truth. And I want for us to celebrate you, Michael, for having what I call the courage and also the grace to engage me in the changes in your mind and bring it to the attention of Heather, because she reads the press, but of those who maybe are thinking things about others that they want to maybe make amends with, which I love that you've said that was a time of reflection time, and encourage people to make amends because it makes others feel so good. And I just want to tell you, Michael, you made me feel so good today. And I appreciate you being here with us and sharing.
You know, you can't turn back the past. You can't undo what you've done, but you can try to make it better. So why not make that effort?
That's right.
Yes.
Why not make that effort? Amen to that. I just want to say, everybody, until next time, live in loving kindness.
And don't be a dick.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Well, that was fun.
I don't think I've ever interviewed a gossip columnist, so it was really fun to have you interviewing him, interviewing me, interviewing you.
You're right. It was. I was fascinated to know why he became a gossip columnist, and I think it made a lot of sense. His kvetching on the stoop with the ladies.
I think it was either gossip columnist or nun, and he chose gossip columnist.
He had a nice nun. He had a nice nun who was an aunt. I wish that I could have met her. It would have been my first and only nice nun in the history of nuns.
Well, now you have her in your heart. But I also think we have the connection to Michael that comes in the next beautiful segment that we're about to play for you.
We used to call her a fan. Now we call her a friend.
A sister.
Yeah. Carrie is coming on.
And she is the number one fan of the month.
It's not the fan of the month. It's more the fan of the quarter.
But the fan of the year. How about the fan? She's such a big fan. She can be fan of the year. Stay tuned.
Anyways, but wait. So she sent me a message saying, did you know that Michael Musto wrote this apology to Anne? And I did. And I'd sort of forgotten about it. And he was kind of he was definitely on the list of people we wanted to reach out to and interview. But her message to me made me, actually do it and reach out to him. And that is why we had that interview today.
And why she's now booking our show.
Exactly. She is literally booking our show.
Stay tuned for a great interview with our fan.
Carrie Ann Newman.
Carrie.
Wow.
Oh my God. Carrie.
We're so wonderful.
We're so excited to meet you.
This is the biggest gift that I've ever gotten. This means the world to me. I cannot tell you.
You're making me cry. Listen, anybody who has as much dedication to me as you have deserves a lifetime supply of champagne.
We first met you, Carrie, like really kind of, I know we haven't met yet, but we first,
right.
known you since Dancing with the Stars is when she really came out to root for you. And she's crying.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Heather came to me in Dancing with the Stars, and she said,
I would show her your
number one fan. And she's like, I have met your number one fan, and you need to know that it is Carrie. And she showed me a picture of you, and she showed me what you had written about me and for me and your support to me. And she's like, this is the kind of person we celebrate. You're why the heck would you pick me to be such a big fan of?
Because you, and I don't know if you realize how wonderful. I mean, do you realize how wonderful of an actress you are? First of all, I told you I love Angelina Jolie. I love Robin Wright. You are in the same category of them. You are a fantastic actress. But more than that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry.
I'm crying.
She's crying.
Stop
so
it.
it's okay.
Barbara Walters.
When you came out and were with Ellen, it was about 4 years after I had come out. But you were the first representation of, although you didn't call yourself bisexual at the time, you were the first representation that you don't have to only love one gender. You were before Angelina Jolie. You know, that people really didn't talk about bisexuality or the non...
We didn't have the words for it then.
There weren't words. And people, for some reason, I used to speak on panels, and they would ask me not to speak because it was confusing the students.
Oh my God. Can you just share a little bit more about that? What you were going to share with students? That's what we're about, gaining knowledge here.
More about the speaking I did?
I want to know what your message was and what drove you and drives you.
The message you couldn't say.
What's your message that you couldn't say?
I'm sorry, I have a little hearing loss. Can you tell me again?
Heather and I would just love to know the message you were trying to say.
Okay. Well, I came out in 1994, but I started questioning in 1993. And honestly, if I look back, I think that maybe you were one of my first crushes when you were on Another World. I saw you the first day you were ever on. I remember that episode so clearly. With you in the tub.
Oh yeah, in Vegas, losing $1 million.
Yeah. And you appeal to me like almost like a magnet. It was that strong. And I just loved, especially Vicky. I'll do that. Vicky was my favorite.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, which twin did you like more?
Yeah, Vicky was my favorite.
Was she the good one or the bad one? She was the bad one?
But look at your relationships on the show through your character. I didn't particularly like, I'm sorry to him because I'm sure he's a nice person, but I didn't particularly care for Lawrence Lau as Jamie. But I loved watching you with him. And I didn't recognize that as a crush at the time. But looking back, I was into you, not Jamie. And I think that emotionally, I connected to you. And then the more I read about you, I connected to you as a person to some degree. I know I don't know you. I shouldn't pretend that I do, but I feel like I know you.
Good.
Well, she's the same person that you hear. And, I think a lot of people portray one side of them to the public and another side, but she's who you see. So I think you do know her, actually.
Right. Thank you.
We're going to come back to you, Carrie, throughout our year and our season because you're a part of our tribe, and I could not be more grateful to know you, and I can speak for Heather on that too.
Yes.
Carrie, do you sing? I want to hear you sing out Better Together with Anna and Heather because I think you know it. I'm going to sing it with you, and I want you to add your name on that when I do that. Okay, we're going to sing Better Together with Anna and Heather and Carrie. Okay, I want you to sing it out, right? Ready, 3. Wow, we all are. Ready, 3, 2, 1. Better together.
Better together.
With Anna and Carrie.
And Heather.
Carrie. Sing your name, Carrie. And Carrie. Oh, we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Oh, it was so great to meet you.
I love you both.
Love you. Have a great day. Oh.
And a big, big thanks to our Better Together team. That's Ryan Tillotson, Sebastian Alcala.
And you, Elizabeth Keener.
Aw, thanks, Ryan. And of course, Ann and Heather.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Straw Hut Media.